I normally have, but we are live, just so everybody knows.
Hi.
So
Hi,
hi,
everybody.
and I'm so excited to have the unicorn. Um, uh, uh, Hi, this is Where We Are Now, a workbook webinar presented in conjunction with dear art producer Heather Elder. And it's just a forum for us to talk about what's happening in our industry week to week with experts on various topics. At some point, we're going to have a poll during this about, topics that you guys might want to, attendee-wise, might want to hear about in the future. But I just want to thank everybody for joining us, including this wonderful panel of people. I do want to do a little shout out to the black part of our screen, which is Jim Hudak. He's the technical director here at Workbook, and he's amazeballs, and we just love him very much. He makes all of this happen. And doesn't complain even when he has had to live on Zoom for the last weeks. So just a big thank you there. I'm gonna, just introduce our panel. I wanted to start off with George Berlin. George Berlin Studio crafts artfully immersive audience experience that charm, endear, and delight. Well, clearly this is true. And delight with inspired narrative and powerful pull into playful fun. George travels the world exhibiting award-winning projection mapping spectaculars that weave light, color, imagery, and sound together into dimensional and dynamic tapestry that brings spaces to life. Thank you so much for joining us, George.
Hello.
And I really want you to do that for me. So for every new webinar, I could be this character. That would be awesome sauce. Also, we have today is Robert Goldman. He's a business coach. He is a mentor and a mindfulness instructor. Robert is a business and personal coach and mentor for executives, professionals, business owners since 2003. Mindfulness instructor and facilitator of groups dealing with life-threatening illness, bereavement, author of the Self-Management Handbook, Act from Choice, and former CEO. You don't see what I see. And that was the end of that part. Walter Smith is also here with us. He is a documentary portrait photographer that absolutely hates writing bios. He has been fortunate enough to travel around the world with someone else paying for it, just as long as he takes a few pictures along the way. Clients include UPS, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, IBM, Brooks, Running, and Starbucks. He has been making images, some good, some bad, since he was 12 years old, and he loves it as much now as he did then, though the business side can be a drag sometimes. Nova Goldberg is an MFT, marriage and family therapist. She is licensed in marriage and family therapist, working in the Bay Area for over a decade with clinical experience serving adolescents, adults, couples by helping them invest in their mental health. She is at her best when she is helping others through difficult moments in their lives and is honored to be able to participate today. We're honored to have you. Heather Elder is here, and she has been an agent for over 20 years. She hosts Dear Art Producer podcasts, writes a blog about the industry, and hosts a site for freelance art producers. Mostly though, she's always thinking ahead, and what better time to do that than now. And last is just me. I've been with Workbook for 6 years now. I'm a big talker, but I also love listening, connecting people, and solving problems. So I really enjoy my work with Workbook, helping and supporting artists in this industry, specifically now. So that's the intros. One of the biggest things that inspired this one today was Walter Smith has been talking to me, and I wanted to start with the topic of being helpful, and how are artists helping each other right now. I know both George and Walter are doing different things, so I was hoping that we could start with you guys. And George, I think I want to just see you talk in that way. So,
All right, let me change to real George. Hang on.
Okay.
This is a serious business meeting, so. All right, I'm ready. So how are we helping each other? I think the first part of it for me is just, I think as creative people, we're a little different than a lot of other professionals. We know people on a lot of different levels of of art creation. You know, it's not just working professionals. It's, you know, people that are, you know, they're painting while they're working at a coffee shop, or they're in production, and some of it's just kind of reaching out to a lot of people is a big part of it. There's a lot of people in my area that I'm worried about, and it seems to help to just, you know, think about, you know, how are people doing is the first part of a lot of that for me, is just to kind of reach out and be like, you know, as we go through the week, as news comes in, to say to yourself, you know, what is that one person? How are they doing? You know, they do all live events, or they, you know, they work in certain areas that might be affected a lot, just to sort of reach out to people and see how they are, see how it's affecting them is the first thing, and what people need. You know, I I have a friend of mine who works at an event company, and somehow he was planning to leave last month, and also he's living in an apartment that his boss owns.
Yikes.
Yeah, and I said, oh, you know, like that's, you know, you have to stop and say, well, how's this guy doing? You know, it's a lot about just reaching out and seeing what people need, I guess, is the first thing for me.
And you also were part of a program that you sent me about, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there was a campaign. So as a projection mapping artist, we it's a pretty international community, and events are all around the world, and so, you know, it's an industry that's really hit really hard right now. Most of what we do is outside for thousands of people, and as we all know, outside is kind of closed, and you know, we're all really afraid. There's a lot of people in my business that just, they can't do anything right now. You know, the biggest people I can think of are out of work, and so they got together to sort of gather together people in my industry to create a projection that started in Bucharest, Romania, called One World, One Heart. It premiered the same night as the One World stay-at-home concerts they had. So they basically just asked projection artists all around the world to submit a short little 10-second animation with a unified theme of having a heart in the center. And then they lined them all together, 46 of these, and started projecting them at this really large mapping festival in Romania called IMAP. And because it's such an international community and there's festivals all over the world, you know, they all just connected with each other and sent it around the world. So that it played in 11 different cities around the world, from Seattle to Kiev and Mexico. And it just, you know, is a really nice, inspiring message. We all put it together within probably 2 days, everyone, which is quite a bit. And it, you know, it was just a nice thing to send out to the world, like, we're, you know, just sort of a message of hope. I mean, we can't do a lot, but that's something we can do. And I think that's part of what's important with a lot of this is doing what we can, because sometimes it feels like there's not a lot we can do.
It's true. Walter, I was hoping that you maybe could talk a little bit about this too.
Well, you know, when all this started, I mean, I'm a talker. I love to talk to really just about anybody. And when all this started, I just started reaching out to different friends and assistants, other photographers, production people, and just really going full into these real deep conversations about what was happening, where people thought things were going, just really to support each other. Because I think the nature of photographers is, you know, we work alone. I mean, we have assistants, we have crew, we have this and that, but essentially you're working by yourself, or you're at your desk by yourself. And it could really, you know, kind of be a rough situation if you don't have a lot of other things to think about. So I started to just reach out to friends that I know were at their computer desperately looking for work, trying to figure out what's next, and just listening to people. Bitching and complaining with people, I think, is a big part of it. But you know, I try to be as good a listener and friend as I can be, and just give people space to talk, because that's what people have given me, especially over the last year. And, you know, we need each other. We really need each other. We're photographers. We compete for the same jobs, all this kind of stuff. We're all certain styles of people, are all in the same group. But we just can't be competitive about it. We just have to be there for each other. And I think that's been really lacking in the industry for a long time. And, you know, we had a big loss in the industry last year, and that brought a few of us together through this little group chat that just organically started. And, you know, I know it's going to sound all feel good and hokey, but I have a group of men that we all just kind of check in with each other. And I'm a check-in guy. I have no problem with that. But it's like it's this really interesting group of people that 2 years ago, I never would have thought I'd be in contact with, that we actually support each other and listen to each other and probably complain about each other a little bit here and there. But I know that if 1 o'clock in the morning, I just can't sleep, I have something going on that I have to get off my chest or deal with, I could call any of these folks. And they're big photographers, little photographers, producers. You know, social media makes a new level of friendship with people. And, you know, I mean, I'm friendly with a gal out in Minneapolis who I lost a big job to last year, and I was really pissed. But we've become such good friends through this kind of communication. We were chatting last night. It's lovely. You know, take the job. I don't care. It's funny. All these relationships go beyond jobs. And I think that's where it should be. And that's what I'm trying to change and shift with.
Heather, I would love for you to weigh in on this too, both for yourself and for maybe, you know, your roster too, the wonderful artists that you represent.
Well, I could probably start with my roster in terms of, I represent 11 different photographers, and including myself and the people that work with me, there might be about 15 of us. And it's been really interesting to see all the different ways people are kind of juggling the emotion that goes along with this. And here we are about 5 or 6 weeks in. We can kind of start to reflect and look back, and you know, there are days that people are paralyzed. There are days where people are productive. The days blur, right? There's no boundary in terms of when you're replying to an email or when you're getting an email. People are realizing, oh my gosh, you know, I have a kid, not realizing they have a kid, but their kids are home and they're like, oh my gosh, like they're pretty self-sufficient, but I need to be present. Or people have younger kids and they're trying to manage the homeschooling part of what they're doing and work at the same time. So I think we've been a really supportive community that way for each other within the roster. I know individually there's been some pretty amazing things that have been happening. Tim Tatter in particular did the Art for Assistance, where he started, and I think what was important is for him for that is that he felt purpose and he wanted to help and he wanted to give back and he wanted to do it in a meaningful way that made sense for him. And he started this program where you, as a photographer, donate 100 prints, you sell them for $100, and you raise $10,000 for your own assistance. They've been supporting him for years. He wanted to support them. And it's grown, and they've raised over $150,000 so far. And, you know, they're hoping to get it as big as $1 million. So there's a GoFundMe link. We can share that with you later. I know Walter's doing it. I know Andy Anderson did it, Tim Tatter, Eric Almas, Frank Ockenfeld, Michael Mueller, Sandro. I mean, there's some big name photographers that are doing it, and you actually get a print of theirs for $100. It's a pretty cool thing. But kind of back to the point of why you asked me, I think these photographers feel a sense of purpose, and they're literally helping. They're not just sending in a donation to some random place. They're literally helping the people that have been helping them. And I know there's a lot of joy that comes out of that for them, and a sense of purpose. Yeah. It's all kind of what we're looking for right now, since we're not making any money at our normal purpose. We're looking for purpose in other ways.
True. And also, you know, Sean Fenn and Dan Goldberg, I want everyone, Workbook is going to be doing something special about that. We're going to do a podcast where you can have more information on that and know where to, if you want to be involved or if you want to buy something. So you'll have, I'm going to have an interview with Tim at a later date talking about that a lot more and how you can be involved in your own community or support what they're doing. Just a little side note on that. But how about you specifically? You know, how are you?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for asking. I tend to be a doer. So when I get stressed out, or I, in this situation, have been working around the clock and trying to keep evolving and moving my group forward. And it becomes a little obsessive. And a few people have called me saying, are you okay? You know, slow down, make sure you take time for yourself. And I can give an example that this particular Monday, this last Monday, I woke up and I couldn't move. I just was feeling so like, I think it was the weight of a Monday. Like, oh my God, here is Monday.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been working nonstop for 6 weeks around the clock, and I had to gear up for a Monday. And I wasn't interested in working. It felt like it was gone, and the motivation to participate and help and be there for so many people, and including my family, including myself, I crawled back under the covers and I watched bad TV all day. I mean, I literally emailed my photographers. I said, I need a personal day. I'm not functioning. And I got my daughter and we started some bad show on Netflix, and Tuesday morning I was fine. But
that's exactly what you need to do. That's perfect.
You know, I needed to just like remind myself and my brain just to like stop, just like slow down and ingest some really bad TV.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. I actually will work so hard that I hurt myself. I worked so much my shoulder just seized up. I just couldn't use my arm anymore. And I feel like we forget that, you know, it's kind of a grieving process. Like the world we know is sort of dead. And we forget that, like, we want to fight it. We want to try to change it. We want to pretend it's not there. And it's like, there's a weird part that you have to accept. Like, I can't just like worry myself into working every minute to try and fix this. It doesn't work. And you know, my body will stop itself if I don't do like you and take a break. It'll just be like, no.
This is a perfect segue into our experts here. And I can see that Nova wants to jump in. You.
Yeah, I was going to just say to George that, you know, it seems to me that the body will manifest the stress that we're holding inside. And so ideally, you know, we don't want to let our bodies get to that point where they do start, you know, breaking down or seizing up. But sometimes, you know, we push a lot of our, you know, our stress or our anxiety away until the body says that's enough. So it's really good that not good, but good that you listen to your body. And to Heather's point, taking a day of self-care, you know, where you just need to just stop and hit the pause button and, you know, find ways to really, you know, replenish, because if we aren't taking care of ourselves, we're not able to fully take care of others personally, professionally. And so, you know, I think sometimes it's easy to just forget about ourselves, especially when we're feeling so drawn and pulled to helping others, but making sure that we are doing that good check-in with ourselves and just knowing where are we and where is our battery, you know, how low and high is it? And we're the only ones that can take care of ourselves, frankly. So it's really our responsibility, our job to do that, especially when we are facing a time, you know, where we do want to be available for others and we do want to help others, but it starts with ourselves.
I think it's right to give yourself permission to like take a day off like that. And you fight it because we are all, I want to do something. What can I do to fix this? I got to fix my world. I got to fix that world. And then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're fixing it. And by 4 o'clock, you are done. And then it's hard.
We're an industry of doers and we're resourceful. And we
I was thinking, like,
never say no. We're not allowed to say no. We have to always say yes. So I feel like we're just constantly trying to push the ball, you know, push ahead.
Well, I'd like to say something here, if you don't mind. Another approach to this, it's natural and normal that when we're in situations like this that are so fraught, that we tense up, we try to work real hard, we try to juggle everything that we're trying to deal with. But our emotional brains are working on us all the time, whether we like it or not, and they produce the situations like George and Heather were talking about. Think about taking a scheduled time during the day to interrupt whatever it is that you're doing. It can be 5 minutes. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to do anything fancy, but just take 5 minutes, relax, take a few deep breaths, and see where you are. See what you need. If you're sad, take a few minutes to grieve. Acknowledge what is, and you find it's like taking a shower, and you'll come back much more refreshed, and it will be less likely that you'll need a whole day off if you continue to check in with yourself, to be kind to what's going on in your mind and your body, rather than clutching at everything that is occupying you.
Very
I
well.
couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more on that.
Well, that takes me to sort of the next question, really, which is, you know, how are you guys advising your clients in this time? I mean, obviously that was stellar advice, but you know, does it all start with that, Robert, or are there other things that you're, you know, what are the problems they're talking to you about, but also, you know, what are you saying?
What I'm trying to get people to do is to be very intentional about time, very intentional about what it is they want to do, in a framework of understanding that the situation is what it is, that one of my favorite mantras is don't know, can't know. I'd like to encourage people to make contingencies for all the things that they're worried about, write them on a piece of paper, store them where they keep their fire insurance, which is where they belong, but not to get caught up in stories about the future, not make promises to themselves that things are all going to be over by Christmas or June 1st or 15th, but simply to take every day at a time and to try to manage their minds. And I'm not talking here about, you know, if somebody is a mindfulness practitioner, they know what to do. If somebody is not a mindfulness practitioner, this is not the time to start, because learning to face your mind in that kind of disciplined way at this time is very advanced practice, difficult to do, and for some people causes a freak out. So my baseline suggestion is figure out what it is that you want to do. What are the activities that are important to you to manage your life, the things that are in front of you. Allocate specific time blocks, create a weekly schedule that says that from, you know, Tuesday, from 10 to 12 on Tuesdays, I'm gonna try to clean out my store of images and throw away stuff I don't need anymore, or whatever. Time for yourself, and try to follow that schedule. Use the schedule to bring you into awareness about what it is that you have to do, what you're making progress on, and mostly to where your mind is, so that you can drop this clutching that we all do, that is natural that we do at a time of high stress.
And I would add, I love everything you just said, Robert, because I think that it all begins with us, right? So knowing what is going on with us, you know, we're fluid beings, right? We're emotional beings, we're energy. So it varies day to day, hour to hour. So just knowing what's going on with us is the starting off point. And then I love, Walter, what you were saying about your group and these conversations you're having, because, you know, having a support group of any type is really crucial all the time, but specifically now. And if we're able to first know what's going on with us and what we need, it's a way to show up, I think, differently, to be as authentic as we possibly can be right now, and to be vulnerable when we feel safe, with people that make us feel emotionally safe. But reaching out to others that we have in our lives, family, friends, colleagues, just in a new way, if we haven't been doing this before, is one of the best things that we can actually do right now, because there is this collective experience that we're all going through. And in some ways it could be the best time to have these types of conversations that we haven't had before, that we all, I truly think, like, deeply need and we're craving, to be more seen and heard in an authentic way, and to show up for others so they can be seen and heard in an authentic way. And when we're going through a collective experience like this, it's a way for us to connect in a way that, we weren't able to before this, like, not since 9/11 that I have felt this kind of collective availability of others,
Right.
So I'm just encouraging people to also think about connections in their lives and developing, support groups, small, medium, large, however, whatever makes sense for you, but that it's a crucial time to stay connected.
Right.
I found what you just said, Robert. I wanted to just go back instead about not planning and just being present and in today. I think that is, it's a little bit of a light bulb for me, because all I'm doing is planning. Like, I feel like that's all I'm doing. I mean, thank God for this webinar for me personally, because it makes me feel like I'm doing something productive. And it's such a gift for me that I feel like that's like, and it really is. But I'm also thinking about, okay, what is business going to look like for my clients? What's business going to look like for me? What is post-COVID look like? And I can get very wrapped up in wanting to have control over that, right? And to have some say in it, but also the lack of control. But I still need to plan. I still need to, and I those two things are so counter in the way they work in my head. Is there a way to separate that out somehow? And honestly, either, Robert, I'd love to hear your thought on that.
This is a common question. You need to plan for the future. You have something to put, a program to put together tomorrow. You have to plan for that. You have to gather your resources and do it. The question is, how much emotional energy are you putting into imagining what the situation is going to be, rather than planning on what the situation requires you to bring to it? Ultimately, as you know, this is your thing, and I suspect that when you come to a program like this, you come and you're open, you have your outline, but you're there to let things develop as they develop. You're not holding on to it. You may have some fears about whether it's going to work out well or not, but the basic idea is, take all the preparation that you need. And if things could go bad, have at your side those things you'll need in that circumstance. But don't live there. Don't live in things are going to be bad. Try to arrive to be as open and as creative as you can be. Does that help answer your question?
It does.
I want to add too that I know Walter talked a little bit about how we're sort of preconditioned to always be hustling and figuring things out and getting job done. And a lot of us, we define ourselves as creative people by the titles we have on the bottom of our screen now, photographer, director, animator, illustrator, whatever. But I think like Robert was saying, our really big skill is creativity and the ability to improvise. Because I feel like there's sort of in between, like, planning and who knows what's going to happen, is like being open to possibilities is, I think, really important right now. We do it all the time as creatives, when you're working on a project and you see a thing that you say, oh, I didn't plan that in here, but that'd be like a perfect ad lib for what we're doing. You know, I feel like a lot of what's going to happen right now needs to be like letting go of what we used to do and what we could do, and being available to like jump into things when we need to. And I think that'll help us all a lot, especially as creative people, is just the ability to improvise.
I think we keep coming back to the word nimble. It's everywhere for me. It seems to be everywhere for me. And I'd love to, if Nova, I'm so sorry. Nova, if you could, I see you nodding with me. I think that's a concept that it's everywhere right now.
Yeah, well, I was also going to go back to what you were saying just a few moments ago, Heidi, about this need for control, which I also think is a huge theme right now I'm seeing with a lot of my clients, and how it's just showing up for them with work, with family. You know, I talked to a mom this morning whose son has a fever and he's fine, but you know, the first thing that she did, which she did last time this happened, was like clean the kitchen for the 4th time, you know, all day, because it's a reaction she's having to feeling, you know, she's feeling out of control right now with her son having a fever, so I can't control my kitchen, right? And what I was talking to her about was just being aware of what she's doing. If she can give herself 5 or 10 minutes just to be with these thoughts, right? And being more mindful of what she's doing. And that really that what's underneath it is just this feeling of wanting to control something she can't. And the more you can sit with that feeling, even though it's really uncomfortable for us, but if we can give ourselves a few minutes a day to sit with that, we're less likely to be afraid of it, you know? And the whole idea I see right now is facing these thoughts that give us, you know, that create fear, because they're just a thought. And so the more we can just slowly turn and face it and give ourselves 5 minutes with these thoughts, you know, they become smaller and smaller and smaller. And we're not, you know, we're not so afraid of them, and they're not running our lives. But specifically to Heidi, what you're doing right now, which I love, is that, you know, you said that this web series or this webinar is giving you, you know, something to look forward to, or something that makes you feel productive and useful. And I see that as like an example of what we can be doing in our lives in little ways and in big ways, where we're rising to meet this moment for what it is. You know, we don't know what it's going to look like in 3 months and 6 months and a year, but we do know what today looks like. And so if by doing this, you know, you're contributing, you're putting things out there, you're bringing people together, you know, in a way that meets this moment. And that's all we can frankly control. And so I see that as like one of the best things that we can do with this uncomfortable feeling is, well, what can I do right now? You know, that is helpful and useful and creative, and is using my skills and is using my talents in a way where I'm still feeling connected to this world.
That's really interesting. I'd like to move on to being thoughtful about our consumption. And I know that I want to go back to you, Nova, because yesterday you really were so smart in talking about this, that, you know, being thoughtful about what we're consuming. We talked a little bit about social media and the news and things like that. And I'd love for you to sort of, you know, bring us into that thought.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I was saying yesterday that I think our relationship with media, and then our relationship with social media, is an issue for us to all look at personally. And that, you know, we had a relationship with media and social media before the pandemic, and we continue to have one. And I think that it's, you know, up to each of us to look at this relationship and how is this relationship making us feel? You know, almost think of it as a person. And, you know, we've all been there in relationships that have brought out the best in us, and relationships that haven't, you know. And so media and social media is the same thing. It's a person, right? And so this, just knowing how it makes us feel. And I think it's really good for us to be aware of our thoughts and feelings around it, how much we want to limit, when we feel like we've hit our limit, you know, what sources, you know, make us feel informed and less afraid, fantastic. Sources that make us feel informed and highly anxious, not so good. And the beauty right now is that we have so many choices, so we can find good people that are writing things in a way that can feed that part of us. Like, okay, I don't want to be maybe totally blind or ignorant, but I don't want to live in a state of anxiety, because that's not good for my body and for my mind.
Right.
So I think being very careful and curating, the sources that we're looking at online right now is really important.
What I'm hearing is this idea of being aware, but I think it's self-aware, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because there's things that go through your head and you start to be reactionary, and it's not even with thought, right?
Yes.
So
it's so quick. It happens so quick, and it goes from thought, feeling, behavior, and it just happens so fast, so.
How can we slow that down? Like, how can we, I don't know what I'm really asking, I guess, but how do we get a handle, or are there any kind of exercises that we can start to employ in our lives that might help us be more aware of what our I'm not asking this well, but I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Oh, completely. And I'm happy to share, but I'm actually wondering if Robert, since it sounds like that you're like mindfulness is big in your work, if there's something you'd want to say in response to this.
Well, actually, I wrote a whole book on this particular topic. We have a basic problem as human beings, which is that our subconscious brains react to what's going on before we even know what it's reacting to. And it creates feelings in our body, which we call emotions, and puts us into action. And it is only then that we understand what we're doing. And our brain, because it wants to have coherence, it makes up a story about why we might be reacting the way we are. So your question, Heidi, is a really good one, of how can you become aware of what you're experiencing and what your feelings are and where it came from and what you want to do in the moment. And the only way that you can do it, we've all had the experience, I think, of being angry, and maybe really hopelessly angry. And we've all probably had the experience of knowing we're angry, which is an entirely different experience. Because when we're knowing we're angry, we can have some feelings about whether we want to be angry, and if we are angry, what we want to do about it, and so on. So you have to become aware of what's going on. At some point in your life, somebody who loved you told you, when you're angry or upset, pause and count to 10. And that's great advice, except for one thing. Pausing is an action, and you only know to push the button if you know you need to. So you have to figure out a way to become aware. So unfortunately, that you have to just learn to really have the intention of knowing what's going on with you, of knowing those situations that grab you, and have intention about waking up when you're grabbed, so that you can disidentify from this habitual pattern that's dragged you into something mindlessly where you don't want to be. This is the basis of all the habits that every one of us has that we wish we didn't have, what I call unwanted habits.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way, so it has to be sort of after a bad experience, you have to be reflective and say, where could I have stopped? What could I have seen?
That's right.
Yeah, those are our biggest teachers. When we react, in a way that, like, what was that about? What the hell did I just do? Why did I when we can reflect on that later and do some internal work, those moments are our biggest teachers, because A, we're realizing we're human, and B, we're realizing we have these buttons, we have these triggers, and the more we can be aware of those buttons and those triggers. And Robert, I love that you keep saying the word story, because I use that word too in my work, is that we have these stories in our heads, right? if that person says this thing one more time, or if I find the clothes on the floor again, if this, you know, the way they talk to me, it's so disrespectful. These are all stories that we're telling ourselves. And then what happens? Those things happen, and then we react, and we feel justified in our reaction, but we're living off of these stories in our heads. So the idea of looking at our reactions, taking time to reflect, and sitting with that those are our best teachable moments for ourselves.
I think that's great, but it's also when it comes to social media and stuff like this, and I tell my kids the same thing. I have 4 teenagers, 19 through 17. If someone makes you feel bad, unfollow them. Deal with your feelings about how it feels. Unfucking follow them. Simple as that. The humble braggers, get rid of them. You don't need them in your life. It's like if you have a friend that just is constantly on you and makes you feel bad about yourself or what you're doing, that's not a friend. That's someone that wants to get over on you. That's someone that's competitive with you. That's not a friend. Get rid of them. And I tell that to, you know, classes I speak with. You got to build each other up. You got to support each other. And there's plenty of people for each other to be friends with and to have a supportive community. You don't need jerk-offs in your life. It's just not worth it. Life is too short. Get rid of them. Unfollow them. Sorry.
I would add too that in our community, in our photography, creative illustration community, that we are so outward facing. Everything we're doing, we're sharing through email or on Facebook or on Instagram. So if you're consuming that media and you're looking and you're like, oh my God, look at what he's doing. Look at what she's doing. I should be doing that. Then you just think, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough. And someone sent me something the other day about how it makes people feel so terrible that, you know, I was saying it yesterday to you guys, like, who's cleaning their closets? Well, I want to clean my closets. Like, everyone's cleaning their closets. I feel like I should clean my closets. Like, I want to clean my closets.
In my closet.
I don't have time. So now I feel badly that I haven't done it. And then I have to think back and be like, that's ridiculous. Like, I'm doing other stuff. But I think because we all put ourselves out there so much, we think what we're consuming, we should be also doing. So all of a sudden, everyone's to-do list gets really long. And I think it's so important to have expectation managements for yourself and what you're capable of doing and what is important for you to do or not do.
Right.
It was when you said, Nova, yesterday, you said compare and despair, right? That was the line.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, we can have those thoughts. We can see someone do something and like, why am I not like that person? And then social media is ripe for that. You know, I call social media the holiday family cards. You know what I mean? That you're getting, like, it's the highlight reel. Like,
Yeah.
families and their retrievers, when it's like actually they're like yelling at each other and dysfunctional, but we don't see that. You know, so being aware of what we are seeing, but more importantly, like Walter, to what you were saying about the kids, it's like, how does that make us feel? And, you know, I do think that the idea of like unfollowing and creating boundaries is really good. But, you know, I guess there was a part of me that was, and I know it's hard with teenagers because the brain is still forming. And so, you know, I always want to kind of like look at children and adolescents with just like more empathy and going back to how we felt at that age. Because I remember feeling like I was grasping and trying to figure out my identity a lot. But I think the idea is also, how do we not let others have so much power over us and how we view ourselves and how we feel about ourselves? And so, you know, someone could be doing something, but it makes us feel less than. But the idea is that we're allowing that to happen to us, right? So
I agree.
It really goes more from the inside around like not letting other people and their actions take away our self-worth and our power. Only we can do that, right? But it's hard with teenagers because I think of just where they are developmentally, but we can model that for them. Like I would even say to have those conversations about how you do that in your day-to-day lives when we're seeing a child, you know, struggling with something.
How can we do that though? I mean, you know, I guess again, it's back to that self-reflection.
Yeah.
You know, I've been thinking about this a lot with the way things have turned out. I mean, some of it's, you know, it's a terrible experience, but there's some really interesting parts about it. I was talking in a chat with a recent graduate or a student I had met who was talking about our field, and he was telling me, you know, I'm not sure how I'm going to do. You know, I'm really new at all this, and I told him, like, everybody's new at all this now. Like, you know, the field has really been leveled. I mean, I've talked to some people that are, you know, that I'm very envious of in my profession, that, you know, people I want to be are having as hard of a time as I am. And, you know, there's a lot of, I really appreciate what you're saying, Heather, Heidi, I'm sorry, about, you know, productivity. You know, I feel like it's really hard to try to do everything. You know, I have to look back at, you know, the idea, even with social media, of like mission. You know, we talk about it in business, but it's also like, what am I here to do? You know, am I here to encourage people? Am I here to make jokes with people? You know, I want to make people feel better. So, you know, some of what I try to do on social media is control what I'm there to do. So a lot of times I'll go in groups for people who do what I do, or, you know, groups about animation, and try to help people out, try to help, you know, people who are stuck somewhere and they want to learn something. You know, can I help people get better at what they do? Can I help people feel better about what they're doing? And, you know, I use social media to connect with people. I started mailing out like physical postcards that I've painted to people who I connect with on social media. So I just say, hey, let me send something fun to your house, you know. Like, it's not a big thing, but I can use it like that. I mean, it's really easy to turn social media into just like a TV that you're clicking your way through, and, you know,
Right.
there's bad news, good news, somebody wants your money, somebody's better than you. You know, it's really hard to, I feel like I have to decide what I'm there to do is
Yes.
part of it.
Yes, your intention.
No, that's a really good point. What am I there to? It's not about consuming. What are you there to do?
Right.
Really
Well,
great.
and George, you said a few times that how everybody's going through the same thing. I mean, this is truly an unprecedented time of shared humanity. We
Oh, yeah.
literally globally are all going through the same thing, no matter where you are socioeconomically, like, and it doesn't matter what your career is. We are all going through the exact same thing and sharing the same emotions. And I also think, as a culture, as an industry, like, and I've said this before, but we have been operating on a level that was not sustainable. So we have a moment in time right now to really reflect on who our next best person is going to be. And I want to take this time to work on myself, work on my career, work on those around me, to kind of figure out, I've changed during this time. Like, I'm literally a different person. I'm thinking differently about stuff. I'm paying attention to things differently. I'm not going to be the same person on the other end of this. So
Right.
what is this time going to be used for? Do I want to spend it on social media, you know, taking in stuff that's making me feel badly? Probably not. I'm moving on to this other spot. So,
You know, I one of my business groups that I'm in, we talking a lot about like these productivity bros on LinkedIn who are like, yeah, I'm gonna pull out my new $1 million business. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And it's like, I mean, I feel like if you're not breaking down at some point, there's something really wrong with you, first of all. But it's also like you said, it's time to say, well, what, you know, I can't do everything. I would really love to, you know, get more projects and do that film I wanted to do and clean my closet and all this other stuff. And it's like, I'm going to be able to do like 5 things. I mean, I'm thinking of what Robert said about the stories we tell each other. You know, I had joined a gym at the beginning of the year that I was going to a lot, and I realized, like, I like some of the exercise, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to go to classes at a gym. And that's like a story, you know, there's a lot of things I'm finding about myself now. Like, you know, you tell yourself, I'm the kind of person who would clean my house during the pandemic, and you're not. And there's a lot of, you know, I feel like it reveals, like, back to social media, I feel like it sort of amplified everything. Like, people that are good can show you they're better now, and people that are bad seem
Right.
worse. You know, it's a great
Right.
time to be more of whatever you are. And I feel like we need to sort of decide like
Yeah.
who we want to be and what are the 5 things out of the 20 that we want to do.
That's right.
I'm not cleaning any of my closets. I'm just
I am
putting it
not
out there. I haven't
Either.
I have no way. I'd like to actually, this dovetails really nicely into our next topic, which is productivity. You know, tools we can use to stay focused, be productive, and motivated from working from home. I think, Robert, you really were talking about, you know, blocking out times and creating a schedule. Are there any other, you know, you all just said, you know, I have a to-do list of 20, I'm going to get to 5, things like, what kind of tools can we set into place that gives us the structure that will help us be more productive and mentally healthy?
Can I say something right away, which is this isn't really a tool and it's kind of an anti-tool, is like give yourself permission to fall apart. There's a book I like, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he talks about how he spent all this time worried about losing his mind. And he was like, I'm just going to lose my mind at the beginning and get it over with, and then I can go to other things. It's like you're going to have a breakdown. Like I spent, you know, I had a day that I was just crying for like 4 hours for no reason. It's just everything, you know, and it's like, that's going to happen to you. And you're going to feel like shit and you're not going to get things done and you're going to want to be productive all the time. And it's, you know, we're in a production.
And we have the best cover in the world. We literally have a pandemic, right?
Oh, yeah.
No one can get mad at you for having a bad day during the pandemic,
yeah.
right? You're not productive. It's a pandemic. Like I'm not.
And I want to say, you know, I have less work right now than I did, but I feel like I have more things to do.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, not even if I don't take anything extra, just like there's more to figuring out what my business is going to do in the next 6 months. Like I have to decide how to handle everything being different on top of doing everything I would normally do to try and survive. You know, it's not just like the same amount of stuff I would normally do. Now I have like a whole different world to figure out. And it's like extra stuff, you know. I have to pivot what I'm doing a little. That's
Yep.
more work than I had yesterday, you know, before all this.
So I wanted to, you know, let's talk about some tools that we can start to employ in this time frame that'll allow us. I mean, can you schedule a breakdown? Like mine happened in the middle of my mother's 80th birthday party Zoom where I could not stop crying, and it was just bizarro. And yeah, I mean, is that even something that could be scheduled? And but larger than that is, what are the tools that we can implement, the schedules that we can implement that'll lead us to a healthier, more balanced existence right now? Nova?
Yeah,
I can
unless Robert, you wanted to say something. I love hearing you speak, Robert, but it's up to you.
I think what I mentioned earlier, if you can accept your weaknesses, make them okay. If you're sad, grieve. It'll keep you from getting angry when all anger is an excursion from how bad you feel.
Mm-hmm.
If you can take time to simply be quiet with yourself, and you don't have to take a lot of time, and you can actually set it on a timer, decide you're going to take 5 minutes every third hour or something of the sort. You won't remember to do it, so do schedule it, do set an alarm, and just take a few minutes to settle in, take a pause, touch your body, get into your body, feel your body in the chair, your feet on the floor, whatever you're doing. Acknowledge that you're breathing. Acknowledge that you have gotten through every bad situation that has happened in the course of your life up to this moment. Trust that you will continue to dance with whatever happens to you in the future. Take some deep, kind breaths. Put your hand on your heart if that helps you to comfort yourself, and then go about your work. Jump in, swing, dance, do whatever. But take the time out, do it regularly so you don't get behind the curve. That's the best advice I can give you.
I love everything that you said. And I would say the more you can do that, what Robert just so like lovely, he just walked us through that, an idea that you'll be able to find your power for work, you know, because it's such a pivotal moment to look at our work and like, what are we here to do? And like, what, you know, I know it's a question about like purpose and how we're useful and how we serve the world, but it really is like we have a power inside of us, and it shows up oftentimes through our work, and especially with creative people that live in that world. And so the more of those check-ins that you can do with your mind and your body, little ones, you'll figure out your power and what you want to focus on. And like George, you saying like, I can't do 20, I want to do 5, and maybe I should just do 1 right now.
Yeah.
And the more you can figure out what that 1 is or 2 is, and come from that place of power and focus, like then the work will come, you know, the flow will come. The flow is really, really crucial now too. And we have a time to find that because we actually have more solitude than we ever had before.
I'd love to switch over to Walter with an example of maybe something like that in your life that like maybe if you could give us a story about basically what they were just sort of describing, because I know you have some nice coping.
Lots of stories. Well, you know, I think what Robert's saying is good about, you know, kind of staying in place and kind of getting with your thoughts. But I think that's a great idea, and some people can really do it. But I think for the majority of people that I work with and know, they don't have necessarily the luxury or time to do that. They want an answer. They're used to, I want to take a picture, I'm going to take a picture and it's going to be done and get to it. So I certainly do find time where I'm just literally lying out on the floor and taking 15 minutes and just letting my body just relax in that moment. But then I get up and I'll get in my car, or I'll do something in my house with my kids, make dinner, something creative, get outside myself and my regular routine and think outside the box. I mean, everybody's big on what's the new normal. There really is none. It's just, we're going to reset everything and it's going to be different going forward. You know, outside the box thinking is a huge thing. And I've talked with clients and other photographers, art buyers about this all the time. Like, how are we going to get things done moving forward? And it's important to like have a purpose in your day and have a schedule, and you can't get 20 things done. And if you do get that one thing done, that's terrific, but you do have to do something. And for the first week, I didn't clean my closet, I sheetrocked the basement. But after that first week, I was like, I'm setting my alarm every day at 7 o'clock, 7:30, and I'm out of bed and whatever, make coffee for somebody, have tea, walk the dogs, or every other day I go for a run. But it's like, okay, I just need to kind of get through this Monday to get to Tuesday. And what can I do to have purpose in that day? And also I do personally, I give myself that time to like be upset. And, you know, people that know me know I'm a marshmallow inside. And it's like, I have driven into the city when it's a safe time to take photographs and, you know, to do little projects on my own, because I know it's what I need to do for myself. And I'll go with a tear in my eye some nights. It's just like, what do I need to do? I just need to trust that this is happening for a reason. It's not me personally, but this is happening for a reason. And I have to figure it out how I can get from A, you know, to B in this. And that's personally how I do it. I mean, I've done it 3 times this week. I've just come in and shoot the city and shoot my kids and have different conversations with people and, you know, allow myself that time to be upset, but also, you know, kind of keep myself in check with it, not let it be everything.
You know, I'll say, you know, as a designer and director, sometimes, you know, I have to schedule my days, even when there's not a pandemic, around what I need. Do I need creative input? Do I need creative output? You know, do I need to study things? Do I need to rest? my mind. I feel like now I need to, like, one of my big productivity tips is I need to be more gentle to myself. And part of that is I know that, you know, the way I solve problems with even creatively is I obsess about them a little bit. And, you know, when I feel anxious, I want to work more on one thing. And so sometimes I have to break my day up into, you know, I have to have several projects so I can stop one and go on something else, because, you know, the anxiety of working on what we do already, you know, if you get anxious about your project and then you've got this whole other big thing on top of that, it you know, it sort of compounds. Like I can work myself crazy really easily. So it's good to, you know, to have different things to work on to keep me flexible. And I feel like it helps to have goals every day and week that are like, here's a near-term thing and here's a longer-term thing, because, you know, I'll have mornings where I've got a goal of doing this and this, and I just can't do them. You know, people need to talk or something comes up, or I have to, you know, I feel like productivity is harder right now because everything's so up in the air. And it's like if all we do is set like these really narrow-minded, hard goals for every day, we're going to feel really bad. And I had a while for maybe a week where I just felt like I wasn't getting anything done, you know, and it's like you've got a feeling of feeling useless and helpless already from all this. And like, if you make all these little narrow goals that you can't accomplish, it makes it even worse. And also, like Walter said, you know, I'm spending more time, you know, taking a break, go outside, go for a walk, go for a bike ride. You know, I have to take care of me a lot more. I think it's not really it doesn't sound like a productivity tip, but, you know, I can't, you know, I know in production, we're really hard on ourselves sometimes, you know.
I think it is a productivity tip.
Yeah.
Self-care is a topic that I think it all leads into each other. There was a live question that I wanted to send Walter's way. Hi all, thank you for your time. As it's such and this is the next topic I wanted to cover before we wrap this up. Hi, thanks for all your time. In such an isolated, competitive occupation such as a photographer, in the recent past, I've made attempts to communicate with other photographers, more prominent and less prominent ones, through face-to-face and emails, but I've been met with their unwillingness to be friendly, never mind helpful. I guess that's due to their insecurity or lack of time. I added that part. And I don't need to chat or mentor you, so why should I kind of attitude. How does one create work friends, as Walter mentioned, in this lonely career? It's such an isolated, and it takes us into that other, the last point I had on our outline today, which is, you know, it's such an isolated business. You're already in an isolated business, and how in this prolonged isolation do you connect more? And is this a good time for what this person is asking? Like connections I couldn't make before. And I know I wanted to send this to you, Walter. I know that you've been doing a lot of this.
You know, I saw that question, and my one-line answer to that at first was, you know, call your heroes. And that's it. You know, that's always been a thing I've done my entire career. Allen Ginsberg, Dwayne Michaels, Arnold Newman, Bruce Davidson, these guys that made me the photographer I am just from their work. Burke Uzzell, even Andy Anderson, he and I, we share a birthday, but we also, you know, I'm a fan of his work. Reach out to your heroes. And if they're an asshole to you, then, you know, that's who they are. Some people are going to just be like that. But if you reach out to your heroes and just want to, you know, compliment them, let them know why you're reaching out to them, you know, what you like about their work. You know, if they can't hear that and give you a few minutes of time, they're not worth your time. And, you know, I hear from people every once in a while, not like I'm anybody's hero by any stretch, but, you know, I love my work. I love to talk about photography. I think that comes across. And it's like, if somebody contacts me, I try to talk to them as much as I can. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes. But some of the best advice I ever got in my career never came from a job or anything else. It just came from conversations with some of those people I mentioned. You know, hearing Dwayne Michaels showing him a portfolio of work and telling me he hated everything but one picture, which broke my heart. But I understood it. I absolutely. And it was Bruce Davidson who I called in an absolute burnout one day, just when I was out of school. And he said, you know what? fuck it. He's like, just go see a movie. You don't always have to be taking pictures. Go see a movie. And it was like, that was the single best advice I was ever given. And I'm a big believer, and I'm a street photographer, so I'm shooting everything or thinking about it all the time. Sometimes you just have to be in the experience and not take a picture and have that in your mind and let it play in your mind. I mean, often people wonder why I never have vacation pictures, and it's because I'm on vacation and I just want to be in that moment. I want to feel whatever I'm feeling. And I don't, if I want to take a picture, great, but I don't feel any, desperate need, to do it. So, make friends. I think it was Glenn. I was like, make friends with people that, will answer your questions or give you some time. And, I've reached out to a lot of creative directors lately, people that I'm fans of, and I've loved their design work and whatnot. And I just let them know that, hey, what their work is meant to me. And one of my biggest clients that he's gone beyond the client friend to friend. I met in 2004, and it basically came from an email saying, I know you're not looking for any photographers right now, but I'm just such a fan of your design work. Here's my samples. If there's ever anything you need, whatever, let's do it. And we actually connected a month later and talked about construction work, of all things. And then I went on to shoot for him for 10 years for Coke. So you never know. I was lucky with that, but you just call your heroes, make some time.
I think this is such an interesting point, because the question was framed a little bit about what can you do for me, as opposed to the way you're saying to approach people like, this is what you have done for me.
Yeah.
Right. It's a big distinction, right? Asking somebody to be your mentor is no small question. So,
and I think in this environment, reaching out and needing something or expecting something in return from someone might be a big ask, because you don't know what you're emailing or calling on the other end. But just offering, I've always loved your work, or I'd love to connect with you if you, have a common interest in doing so. Like that makes it way easier than, hey, can you, can you give me some advice on cameras or something? Someone might be like, okay, not right now, or I can't look at your website now,
Right.
Don't ask for anything. Don't need anything. Just have, just be. Yeah, that's exactly it. And people will respond.
Well,
I feel like right now, we're in a very isolated profession, photographers, illustrators, animators, we work by ourselves. And I feel like everyone's isolated now. And it's not just the feeling of isolation, but people don't, not everybody understands what's happening in their industry and by themselves. And it helps me a lot to, call up clients or people that are bigger than me that I've worked with and say, hey, like, what's going on? Like, we all need to talk to each other to understand what's actually happening.
Well, that brings me to my next point, really, and it's actually the end of all of this, which is our silver linings right now. And I'd love for everybody to think about that sort of in a professional and in a personal way, and go either direction. I'm going to ask you all what your personal, what your silver linings are right now. Robert?
Well, the silver lining is that difficulties fuel growth. It's just that simple. That it's when we run up against our limitations, when the world treats us poorly, when we fall into this bucket of shit we're in, and have to deal with it, we come out stronger than we were before.
Really well said. Nova, would you maybe give us your silver lining?
Yeah, so for me, it's more personal. Before this happened, I think I had a story in my head that I told myself about being a parent, that I'm not like quote unquote stay-at-home parent material. I like my work. I like to be useful outside of the family. And when this happened, I think I felt really challenged with that story and being more responsible for my kids. And I think honestly, like not wanting to do it at first, like resisting it. And then now here we are 6 weeks in, and I realized, no, I can do this. I can be available in ways that I didn't give myself credit for. I'm also someone that loves to travel, and spring break, I'm always like making a plan in October for March. And if you were to tell me that I was going to be stuck at home with my kids for spring break, I'd be like, well, that's a nightmare. And actually it's been good. It's been good. I think I'm just such a big fan of seeing how we adapt and seeing change and proving to ourselves that we have stories that are limiting ourselves and that we can do so much more than we think we can. So.
I'm going to go to George, then Heather, and I want to end with you, Walter Smith, because everybody, they could listen to you all day. So
I saw that one.
I saw that one too. That's a friend of Robert Gallagher's, a wonderful person, and it was nice of him to say that. But George, let's go to you and just your silver linings a little bit.
You know, I think part of it is just realizing that people are better than we all expected they are. You know, this is kind of somebody called it the apocalypse of kindness. You know, it's not the way people thought it would be. That, and I think just reconnecting with, you know, the creative process is about how you live your life. And I think more of that than just, it's about getting projects, getting work. That part's been nice to remember why I do this sort of thing.
Heather?
You know, I had a milestone birthday last year, and it was a really great time to kind of reflect on my life before that and what I want my life to be like after. And, you know, I don't know if struggle is the right word, but I was wrestling with what I wanted the rest of my life to look like. And I think with what we're in the middle of now, right now, I think the same thing is happening. It's like what your life was like before and what it's like afterwards. And I feel like we're all getting such perspective on what we want our life to be. And I'm hoping that the more time I'm spending with my family and the things I'm focusing on in my career and all these things that are giving me strength are going to carry me through this. And like what Robert said really stuck with me, this idea that like we've all gotten through all the worst times of our lives. We've already been through those. Like we can get through this. So I'm looking for that strength. I'm happy for that strength and that perspective for when we get on the other side or whatever the next thing is. I just think there'll be a lot more clarity for people.
Yeah.
Walter.
Oof. So what do I think the silver lining of all this is? For me personally, it's like Heather's saying, it's like clarity. You know, I had my milestone birthday a couple years ago, and you know, I think when you become clear, I think it can be enriching. I think it can be heartbreaking. I think it can be a lot of things. And I've certainly experienced, as some of you guys know, a lot of clarity lately. And I'm just trying to embrace it all and know that, like, in those moments when things are a little strung out and really difficult to see what the next step is, I just kind of, I'm not a religious guy, but I just kind of rely on there's a reason for this personally, big picture, and I just can't control it. And the only thing I can control is how I feel and how I respond to it. So, you know, the silver lining, I don't know, for me, clarity, you know, and, you know, better relationships, you know, mending fences, building new ones, you know, finding new friends.
My silver lining is that I get to have this camaraderie and this forum. That's a big silver lining for me, but also my priorities. I also had a big birthday just this year, last year, and my priorities are completely different. They're just completely different. You know, family first, and then work, and then, you know what, I don't have to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning figuring out that email. You know, I can go to sleep and I can take my dog for a walk and that email will get done because I'm that person, you know. So right. A lot of clarity. I echoing everyone else, the camaraderie. I think that the camaraderie of kindness, I think, is what George was saying, and I certainly have felt that, and the generosity that people are just have right now. And that just takes me to you all. The generosity that you've shown us today and spending the last hour and something minutes with us has just been so thoughtful and so wonderful and so important. So that's it. We do have a little video at the end, just because it's really sums all of this up very nicely. And so I'm just going to say thank you all so much. Goodbye, and we'll be back next week and announcing our next topics and all of those things. And then if you can just give me a wave and let's all watch this little video, and then have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.